Welcome back, everybody. And yes, I am rocking a fanny pack. I hope you all make sure to get your fanny pack swag, NCG fanny pack, before you head out today. But fanny packs are back, y'all. My name is Jamie Woods. I go by she, her pronouns, and I'm the Director of Strategy and Partnerships at NCG. I work at the intersection of membership and development, and I work to bring people closer to our mission and mobilize resources for our work.
Hi, everyone. I'm Viri Diana Romero. I go by Viri. My pronouns are she, her. I'm Manager of Strategic Initiatives. I manage NCG's collaboratives and networks focused on issues like criminal justice, the Arts and Loan Fund, and our new nonprofit sustainability initiative working to strengthen our nonprofit ecosystem. So thank you all for being here today. It's so lovely to see your beautiful faces. I feel so inspired. It's been so powerful seeing you all come together, having such important conversations. How are you doing, Jamie?
I'm feeling inspired. I'm feeling overwhelmed with gratitude. I'm feeling excited for the work ahead. I'm really feeling rooted in possibility. I'm seeing the magic of gathering together in person. Woo! When we gather, there's so much we can co-create to create the equitable future we want.
We've listened to so many amazing ideas today. I just came from the youth power session where we learned about how we can share power with young people. This morning, folks talked about regenerative economies. We talked about how we create spaces where folks can belong, and how we can actually create a space where everyone, and really everyone, can feel like they belong and thrive within our organizations.
The best way to change practices is by coming together to envision new possibilities. And speaking of possibilities, we're here to introduce two people who help create more possibilities for all of us.
Yes, so we're here to host NCG's annual membership meeting, our NCG's board chair and CEO of the Metta Fund, Janet Spears, and NCG's Vice Chair and CEO of the Stupski Foundation, Glen Galaich. Please join us in welcoming them to the stage.
Woo, people are still here. Amen. All right, so thank you all for staying and still being here. I have a little story to connect what you heard this morning. I just returned from vacation, 3 weeks of being away. Amen. Was in the Deep South and the Low Country, and as Mia was saying this morning, speaking about our ancestors and knowing that they are looking for us to carry the torch, or as my mom would say, take that next leg of the journey. I hope each of you today have experienced the opportunity to take that next leg of the journey and to do your part for however long your part is until you hand off to the next generation. So that is something that will stay with me. As I was walking on the lands of my ancestors back in the Deep South, it was so prevalent that they were there with me as I walked through those piney woods. So to each of you here, please embrace taking that next journey and doing your part for now. Glen and I have this privilege of handling our annual meeting. So the first order of business, we do have a gavel. It says Board Chair, Northern California Grantmakers. So I call the annual meeting of the Northern California Grantmakers to order. Thank you all for being here. First, I would like to take this opportunity to thank those board members who termed off in December of 2022 and stayed that extra year to make the transition the best for the board. If you are still here and in the room, please stand up and be acknowledged. Those would be folks that just termed off in the last part of the year. Are any of them here? Yeah, there's one. Woo! All right. Thank you for still being here. I would like to then acknowledge our current board members. who are here and on the board now, and have them stand up and be acknowledged. I think there are a few of them here. Thank you, Lucia. I can't see a diddly back here. Woo! There's Cecilia. Absolutely. Thank you for the heavy lifting that you've been doing. And at that point, thank you for your extraordinary time from the governance committee to bring forth to the membership our slate of new officers. And so with that, there is a slide. And we are here to introduce, I'm going to introduce our new, this is for your vote, so listen closely because your vote matters. We are really happy to introduce this next slate of officers. Board members, they represent private foundations, community foundations, corporate foundations. They have talent, they have expertise, they have knowledge, and we are looking forward to you, the membership, bringing them forward. So I will do quick intros, and if you're in the room, I believe all of them are here except for one, please stand up and be acknowledged. Adrian Schur, Bay Area Giving Program with Google. Over there. This is who you're going to vote for. Number 2, Brianna Lippert, Chief Executive Officer at Humboldt Area Foundation. Back there's Bryna. Priscilla Enriquez, Chief Executive Officer for the James McClatchy Foundation. Up there in the balcony, yay. Kenji Trainer, Vice President of Strategy, Partnerships, Learning at the Stewart Foundation. Yay. And finally, who's not here is Sashi Yoshi. She's the Director of Collective Impact at the Amalgamation Foundation here in San Francisco. She is not here, but she sends her best. So, as I said, they are a diverse group of members. We are looking forward to your vote, which is the formal piece of business that we have, and then Glen and I will say a few words. So, I need to take a voice vote. All those in favor of this illustrious slate of board members, please voice by saying yes. Yeah. Any no's? Any abstentions? Okay, the vote passes. Welcome aboard. So Glen and I just want to say a few words about our passion for NCG and what it all stands for. So first and foremost, I want to say that this is an amazing staff at NCG. I know Dwayne talked about that, but please give them a hand. It is no easy feat to pull off a conference. We've had a little bit of everything today, and I know you're all going to walk away with something that is valuable for you to put into action. So thank you to the staff. What I really appreciate about NCG, and I have been a member for the 15 years I think I've been in philanthropy now, is really the point of view that the organization has. It is about racial equity. We have a point of view, and we in this audience have the ability and the fortitude to bring that point of view to the organizations that we are in, and to the communities in which we care about, and to the people who make our lives better each day. What I feel in this space is that there is a commitment from the organizational membership, each one of you, and the job that you do each day and the families that you take care of, to learning and leading in our communities. Our communities need us now more than ever. We need each other now more than ever. As Mia said, it is about the collective. What are we going to do collectively to move this mission forward, our mission of a better life for each and every one of us? That's what brings me to NCG. That's what brought me here. That's what keeps me here. And then what I really appreciate are the colleagues that I get to work with. So without further ado.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I know for a second there you were confusing me with Vanna White. That's a woman who was on a game show, for those of you who weren't alive when she was on the game show. I just, first of all, want to acknowledge Janet, who has come in as our new chair, and we are all so delighted that you took that job. So thank you so much, Janet. And, um, and the other piece that's happened, and we just had a really vibrant discussion in a session I was in, is that for a while, we have been talking about racial equity in philanthropy. And for a while, I think it was important, given the culture of many foundations, to make the case for racial equity. I feel we're beyond that now. And one of the great developments at NCG, and in partnership with many others, was the construction of a framework called 5 Shifts. And if you haven't had an opportunity yet to take a look at it, what I love about it and what gives me such great pride to be at NCG and be a part of it is that it challenges you as a member of a foundation and working with your peers to step into 5 shifts, centering community, focusing on systems, working in collective action, changing practices so that you are driving towards equitable outcomes, and leveraging capital. And as I was saying earlier today, we struggle in the foundation world to do our only job, which is just to give away the money. And it's not that hard, we just make it hard. So if you loosen that up and give away the money and do it in accordance with these 5 shifts, and challenge yourself and your teams and the people around you and the people you meet to stand on those 5 pillars and practice in that way, I think we can really start to get in the direction we should be going as a sector. And NCG is there to make sure that we do. That you have opportunities to work with others, to be with peers, to be in places like we are today. This cannot be done in isolation. You are going to come across critics and barriers and challenges. You need to invite them in, or you need to learn how to respond to them. And that's why I love being here, and I love being with all of you. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much, Glenn. And that ends our official business, so I'm going to adjourn the meeting. And I will turn it back over to Glenn one more time to do a few more thank yous.
Well, actually just one.
Okay.
If that's okay, just one. I couldn't do the meeting part that Janet just did. That was really well done. Nice job. You know, I just want to acknowledge someone who's very important. Back in, I guess it was right before COVID, the former head of NCG informed us all that she was moving on to an incredible opportunity, and we were all very excited for her. And only a couple of months later, we all had to stay at home. And we had to start an executive search. And I was very honored to be a part of the team that did that search. It was a search that we're all used to now. For us back at the moment, it was like, how are we going to do this search? We can't even see each other. We can't be in a room together. We're on Zoom. We asked the search team, can we even do this? Can we find somebody? How does this all work? And somehow or other, in the end, we found the perfect person to lead Northern California Grantmakers. Today, I feel as though we are seeing the full power of Dwayne. And I just want to acknowledge an incredible leader right now.
Yeah. Thank you. Yep. Dwayne Marsh, come on up.
One of the things that I said when I arrived was calling in the ancestors. Ellen Napont, when she departed, one of the gifts she left was the NCG Board of Directors, and I think you saw a good example of that right there. They've been literally there from day one for me, and it's been incredible. So thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Janet. Thank you, everyone on the board. How are people doing? You ready for a little bit more before we let you go? Let me get into facilitator mode. We've seen today that transformation is possible, but it's not guaranteed. Repeating patterns of the past will not interrupt extractive systems that are doing just what they're designed to do, and they're producing dramatically more harmful outcomes for an increasing cross-section of our communities. I'm so excited to share this next conversation with you, bringing to the stage 2 giants in the field who recognize this earlier than most, forging a new path for leadership in the sector. Judy Belk has been the president and CEO of the California Wellness Foundation since 2014 and a tireless advocate for health equity, justice, and advocacy for communities and individuals whose lives and wellness too often are determined by their race, income, immigration status, or where they live. She's a prolific writer and speaker on organizational ethics, race, and social change, published in the New York Times, LA Times, Wall Street Journal, National Public Radio, amongst others. Dr. Robert K. Ross has been President and Chief Executive Officer of the California Endowment since 2000 and is widely acknowledged as the Dean of Philanthropy CEOs. He's provided consistent leadership in supporting the vision of underserved communities and grassroots leaders for a healthier California and a healthier America. Dr. Ross brings an extensive background in health philanthropy, as well as a rich experience as a health administrator and clinician. Together, they represent more than 4 decades of superlative leadership in this field, which would be far too extensive to properly summarize in this forum, so please take time to review your program for more details until the upcoming Netflix series is properly produced. These two people have had an illustrious history in our sector. They've redefined what health means in our state and throughout the nation. They've been fearless about lifting up justice, equity, and community well-being and wellness, making thriving a North Star for public policy in the private sector. They invested in the capacity of community to advocate for the interest and have a voice, a say, an ability to be an actor you can't ignore. They've expanded the use of philanthropic tools like mission-related investments, and they made community building infrastructure cool. Today, we have the opportunity to get some wisdom from Judy and Bob and learn from their journey, their experiences in the sector, their sense of the challenges that lie ahead, and where we should lean into the fray. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Judy Belk and Dr. Bob Ross. What's are comfy? I didn't get to sit in this earlier.
I know.
So I have to say,
how come we didn't hear the wedding music?
I know.
we know so much about what you guys have accomplished during your tenures. Bob, your leadership in building a movement for men and boys of color, the work with the Dreamers, integrating health equity with criminal justice reform. Judy, your trailblazing work on violence prevention, more recently addressing gun violence. But I want to take us back to the beginning. When you guys first arrived at your institutions, what did you find? Like, what was the shift in the trajectory of the organization, the balance that you wanted to bring to the organizations when you got there?
You want to start with me?
Go for it.
First of all, can everyone hear me? I was having a big battle with the sound folks. They wanted to put a headset on me, and I said it just wasn't working in terms of how I wanted to look. The first thing I want to do, which I'm trying to do in every space that I am, is really express gratitude. Just gratitude for NCG. I feel like I'm coming back home because Northern California is my adopted home. I grew up in Alexandria, Virginia, but really spent all my professional life in California, and Northern California and Oakland is where I raised my kids. It's where I started my career in philanthropy, and it was the first, NCG was the first grown-up board that I served on. I remember getting the call from, I think Carolyn, I'm so old, I think it was Carolyn Tower, and she said that, my name had been put in the mix, and I thought, oh, I'm at the grown-up table now, so it was quite exciting. So gratitude, and also gratitude for inviting us to be with you. And I must say, you are the best dressed, head of an organization I've seen in a long time, so that's really looking good. Okay. I started at Cal Wellness in 2014. And I'll just share with you what was happening in the world, what was happening at the foundation, and what was happening, personally in terms of life, because that's kind of how I see everything. First of all, I thought it was an amazing time to head a public health foundation. I just think Obama was still president. The Affordable Care Act had been approved, passed in 2010, but thanks to the leadership of Bob, many community partner organizations across the state, California had proven by 2014 that this was a transformative public policy. And so 2014 was the last phase of the implementation of 2014. Something like this is great. Jerry Brown was still governor, so had a governorship and a state where public policy and resources were really aligned with what we were doing. So that was what was happening, just in the environment. So it was a great time to come in. I think in terms of what was happening at Cal Wellness, I had my eye on this foundation. At the time, it was only 22 years old. Cal Wellness, in terms of foundations, is fairly young. I had really kept my eye on this foundation while I was going through my philanthropic journey, mainly because of its work around violence prevention. I think many of you know in the audience that I lost my sister to gun violence, and here was this public health foundation very early on when no one else was talking about it, really deciding that, or trying to prove at the time that violence was a public health issue. But the timing for me to join had some challenges. I was the fourth CEO in 4 years. There was a stumble after a long-serving CEO. It's not uncommon in nonprofits for there to be challenges if an organization is not prepared for change, and they weren't. So right after Gary Yates, who had been there for a long time, a really talented Latino woman was selected. She wasn't there very long. Another interim CEO came in, so by the time I came in, it was the fourth CEO, and I had to be convinced to even apply for the job because the word on the street was, at that time, that the board was a little crazy. So
they just hired somebody crazy to
yeah, that's what I'm saying. And then I was just noticing. I mean, it was a first woman of color who had not succeeded. So it took some convincing. The board was tired. The staff was tired. The board made it clear that they had a strategy that they expected me to get up and running. And I would say the turning point for me was when I had an interview with the board, because I just wanted to see how crazy they were. At one point, the board chair said, what's the community saying? Do they think we're crazy? And I said, yeah, they pretty much do. What I really felt was, after talking with the board and really thinking about the history, the legacy of this foundation, that I felt it could be aligned. So on the personal side, so that was what was happening, on the personal side, my youngest of two children had just graduated from college. I thought, she would, be coming back to California. She decided to apply for Teach for America and ended up in what I thought was a pretty safe place at the time in St. Louis, just adjacent to Ferguson. And 6 months later into, my term, Ferguson, as you know, blew up. So I would say it was an interesting time. It was a challenging time. The first call I got was from Bob, and I said, you think I'm crazy in taking the job, knowing, the drama that was happening? And he said, I don't think they can let you fail, and if they do, I'll come over and beat them up. So that was the environment that I think one of opportunities, one of management challenge, and one of really looking at also balancing a lot of issues around systems, and I thought it was a foundation that had a strong legacy, but was ready to also tap into issues around voice, issues around place, issues around using its resources beyond grant making. I remember coming in and there was no plan at that time around mission-related investing. We were located, even place, we were located in the Valley, not where we are located now in downtown Los Angeles, and our office here was in San Francisco.
Bob, you'd already been on board for more than a decade at this point. Did you have observations you were prepared to share with Judy as she was coming on board?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. First of all, Dwayne, if you don't mind, I'm going to check with you every morning about what you're wearing. Secondly, the reason why Judy is liberated to call her board of directors crazy and not live in fear of being...
Not the current board.
She's retiring, and there is a new CEO been named at the California Wellness Foundation.
Is that true?
It's Richard Tate. Is Richard here?
Yes, Richard.
There he is.
And for the record, Richard did not call the board crazy at all, so.
Mm-hmm.
Congratulations, Richard. Yeah, so what...
You ran for 12 years by the time I came?
Yeah, and so just, watching, I mean, two things I felt were real. I mean, one was knowing Judy, I knew she wouldn't fail. Mm-hmm. And knowing kind of what the board had been through, she couldn't fail. Mm-hmm. So I felt like her taking the job was, she was playing this, there's a gambler's expression, you're playing with house money. She was playing with house money. And she didn't come in just sort of, babysitting the position. She moved the foundation and the field. She was at that forefront in the transition from diversity, equity, inclusion to race, right, and to racial equity. And she moved decisively and decidedly the foundation in that direction, and has probably, just as one example of what Judy's done with her her steely spine. You've probably transformed your investment manager portfolio and turned it into an investment portfolio led and driven by folks of color faster than anybody I've seen. Mm-hmm. You did that pretty quickly. You kind of went from behind us, and then next thing I knew you were past us, and I said, damn, what happened? So that was, one thing. And then the second was, Judy's always been a maven and continues to be a maven about communications and messaging and voice, and so elevated the foundation's profile around gun violence, and as we all know, the timing for that couldn't be more.
I know, but Bob, that's all good, but I'm really curious. I don't think I've ever asked, what was life like for you when you...
What do you mean, when I got to...
TCE, I mean,
Yeah,
because you were on the board, were you not?
Yeah, I was on the board for a minute. I was on the board of TCE for a minute. Went to my very first board meeting, and the conversation about the board meeting was firing the CEO. My first meeting. It's amazing that I have that effect on people.
Yeah.
And so I was like, whoa, okay. And I was, you know, I mean, a lot of this is, I think with the 20 years of hindsight and retrospect, Dwayne, the more I'm in this role and in this position, and maybe it's just sort of where I am in life, Judy, the more spiritual things are anchored and centered, you know, for me, because, you know, the last couple of jobs I've had, which have been blessings and beautiful, none of them were planned. They just I didn't plot my way. I mean, the endowment found me on the board. I barely knew what they were doing, and then, you know, the CEO gets fired, and then they asked me to resign from the board so I could interview for the position.
You didn't think about going to medical school and saying, I'm going to be head of a foundation, huh?
No, you know, who knew what philanthropy was, right? From your background, from my background. So when I got to the foundation, the transformation, and it did not happen overnight, and I cannot give credit to my own, you know, strategic, you know, wanderlust. It really came from, you have to allow yourself to be transformed by the work. If you just allow yourself enough humility to be transformed by, you know, as our great hero Brian Stevenson likes to say, Equal Justice Initiative, those who are most proximate to injustice, right? If you just, and so when I came into the foundation was, and this was in, you know, 2020, we were more about charity as a foundation than we were about change, okay, to quote our colleagues from the Liberty Hill Foundation. It was assumed that this giant health conversion foundation, we weren't the first, you guys were before us, although we were bigger, but it was assumed that, you know, and this is, I'm going to try and summarize in a couple of minutes, Dwayne, the transformation that happened to me, and then ultimately as an institution. So when our foundation got created with all this money from California Blue Cross and the conversion, the assumption was that our rapacious capitalism and our, excuse my language, fucked up health system would invariably leave people with gaps. And the role of the foundation was to help fill those gaps. That was sort of the understanding that we would, and that's kind of sort of what we did in New Orleans. We funded community health centers, we funded mental health programs, we funded you know, programs and services for folks who fell through the cracks, which is what most of philanthropy has done for most of time, right? And it became clear to me in some programs, and some of this, you know, didn't happen overnight, but just coming from staff who were working closely with folks on the ground who were doing something a little bit different. And that's when I sort of discovered this thing called advocacy and organizing and activism, where the orientation was not charity, but change. It was not transactional thinking, it was more transformational thinking, right? Why do we have a health system with huge giant gaps in the first place? Why are we incarcerating folks hand over fist in the first place? Why do we even have kids locked up in juvie in the first place, right? So in the early years, if we did grants for juvenile justice, it was a grant to a foundation, not to a foundation, to a nonprofit working in a juvenile hall or to a probation department to get kids who were locked up mental health services. until we're engaging folks on the ground. And I remember a site visit I did early in my tenure at Chuco's Justice Center in South Central Los Angeles that was, run and created by young people who had been in the system, right? And they said, well, Dr. Ross, we don't think young people should be locked up in the first place. We need your help to close youth prisons. So that's the difference between the sort of charitable thinking and the plugging of gaps to the transformational thinking that says, wait a minute, these systems need to be rethought and reconfigured and re-engineered, and we want your help in doing that. And so over time, I went from a foundation CEO who was thinking about a charitable grant, and maybe every now and then sort of an innovation grant, but most of the innovation grants we were funding, Judy, were incremental changes of a fundamentally broken system, right? But when you allow yourself to listen to those who are at the point of injustice and to call out really transformational kind of thinking and changes, then you go from plugging gaps in a broken health care system to health for all. From funding more mental health services for kids in juvie to schools, not prisons. From funding a nonprofit that is providing bicycles for kids, which is a wonderful thing, don't get me wrong, but the Fresno Parks for All initiative, where millions of dollars of city and county dollars were leveraged to get more parks for underserved. So it was just a different kind of, and I became a different kind of foundation CEO.
Bob, I remember, and I'm going back to that call that you made, you also said that I needed to attend a national meeting that you were leading on men and boys of color. Now, I've always wondered, I heard that you were really the one whispering in Obama's ear about our brother's keeper. Tell me how, because you were leading that effort, and there was a huge meeting, and Obama was, and still is very much committed to that area. And then we started a California initiative on men and boys of color, too, that Chet Hewitt has played a huge role in.
Yeah, I wouldn't take credit for convincing the president to do that.
Take credit.
No, I think he was ready to do something on this issue.
Right.
And we had already done some pre-thinking about it, those of us who were, and so I think the timing gods were just right, and somehow the White House picked up on what kind of we were up to, and then invited us to a meeting, and then the rest is history. But again, that was an example of, again, being humble enough to set your attitude to humility, set your ears to listening, set your heart to receive, and listening to what those that are, so listening to boys and young men of color, and the breakthrough point for us where it was sort of the burning bush, if there was an epiphany, was the school discipline work. Because we went to young people in Fresno, it's one of our Building Healthy Community sites, and we said to the young people, it was a group of young people gathered together with our board, and we said, what's your priority to make your community healthier? And they said something which we did not anticipate, I did not anticipate, which was harsh school climate and school discipline reform. That there were too many young people of color, particularly boys and men of color, being suspended and expelled from school. We didn't even know that was an issue.
Yeah, Dwayne, I apologize. I'm sure my staff is saying, there she goes again, taking charge. What questions do you have of us? I'm sorry.
I was fascinated myself, but I do want to ask you.
Judy, he's just here to look good.
But was this an early example for you of the kind of influence you could have at the perch of CEO of a large foundation? Right? You won't take credit for that, but the president was listening.
The president was listening.
Yeah.
And I do think that. I mean, I remember, as I said before, when I came in, the board basically said, we have our strategy in place for the next 10 years. We need you to birth it. And one of the things that I learned, which was the first early use of power, and this is a little piece of advice first, and Richard, this is also a good piece of advice for you, is to your first months or so in a new job, it's a kind of a love fest. And so I didn't know it at the time, but the board, basically said, what do you think of our strategy? And I said, I think it's great, it's good, I can live with it, but there's one big piece of missing. There's not a strong intentionality about women of color, and that it would be very difficult for me to lead this foundation without a stronger statement and some additional resources. And again, because I think there's that love affair, and what are they going to do? Say, no, you can't have the job or whatever. They said, okay, we're open to that, come up with a strategy. And I guess at that moment I just said, oh, wow, I'm going to be able to do this. And so as a result of that, with the help of Fatima and the staff, we came up with a strategy which resulted in a 3 to 5 year initiative with $15 million going to women of color dealing with issues around impact of AIDS and formerly incarcerated. So I would say I don't know about you, but I've had to get comfortable with the power that this position comes with. And I say that because I think one of the first articles I wrote in my first year was saying all of a sudden I've become, just by having this position, smarter, more of a thought leader. People were thinking, Judy, you've lost weight, and I hadn't really gotten smarter, and I certainly hadn't lost weight or anything, but it was so I started having a conversation with myself and talking to folks like Bob and others about getting comfortable with the power and the influence and deciding that, this is a good thing. I'm a good power and influence in my hands. What am I going to do with it? And I went on sort of a listening tour around the state. Staff had a lot of good ideas, community, a lot of ideas, but I think this issue about getting comfortable with the power and the influence that this position comes with and how you're going to, that becomes important. I don't know if you lost any sleep over that or not, over the power. I mean, you've got so much more resources than we have.
But it's never enough, right? I mean, it's never enough.
It's never enough.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I won't miss, first of all, let me just say, these jobs are a gift.
Yeah.
This is enormous privilege
Right.
in these spaces that
Right.
we encumber. But one of the things I won't miss is telling people no.
Yeah.
And you never have enough. But to your point, Dwayne, you've I think what philanthropy has done, well, particularly progressive philanthropy has done better anyway. We're focusing on race better. We're beginning to do better on issues of diversity and meaningful inclusion. We can say that. I think particularly in California, we're beginning to get more comfortable with the assertion of the power that we have. And when I say the power that we have, I don't mean necessarily sort of top-down, I don't mean top-down CEO power, but as being better megaphones or amplifiers for those that are suffering at the point of injustice. I think we're doing better at that. I think we, as CEO specifically, and as foundation staff in particular, that power we have has to be applied surgically. and with some precision. You don't want to be spread thin. You don't want to be all over the place. But you know, as Judy has done, you know, using the pages of the LA Times to get a point of view out. Investing in a messaging campaign. You know, when I'm sitting, just like a number of us sat with the governor's office all day in their philanthropy thing, and when you show up in that kind of space, you're sitting with a governor or a mayor or a board of supervisor member or a senator or a congressperson, and remembering that when you walk into that room, who you are representing, right? And it can be easy when you walk into a meeting at the White House with a President Obama and a Colin Powell sitting there, and to kind of get lost in the trappings of that. But you know, when you are in that room, who you're representing and who you're channeling, whose voice is being articulated when you represent a point of view. And that's incumbent upon all of us, because each of us have, you know, those moments when we're within seats of power. And do you have the courage and the wherewithal to amplify the voices of those who you serve?
But you know, we throw around courage. I mean, really, what is courageous about leading a foundation? I mean, to me, you know, courage is doing the right thing when you're prepared to give up something. And what, so if that's the definition, I can think of a lot of folks who are on the front line, but I don't think we're courageous. In fact, I was trying to think about what's most disappointing over the last 9 years is that I haven't sweated a lot. I mean, I've worked hard, I worry about a lot, but you know, I remember at Levi Strauss, I remember, you know, when I really thought, oh, I'm going to get probably fired. And when we discontinued funding, you know, the Boy Scouts, and we're out there by ourselves, and, you know, I thought, you know, I said, Raj, how much money do we have? I'm going to get fired over this. And it was a huge storm. But And
so what happened?
So I didn't. I mean, at the time, it's great now to say I did the right thing and all of that, but I was really scared. And we were standing alone, and, you know, when Jesse Helms, you know, said on the floor, you know, of Congress, where, you know, I proposed a rider to appropriations bill that no Levi's will be sold, you know, on any military base, and Bob Haas got 150,000 cut up patches, and everybody's looking at me and saying, I thought philanthropy was supposed to make people like me, like us. What, I mean, it was like, you know, the brand and all of that. It ended up, ended up okay. The Haas family hung tight, but it was a national boycott was called against the company. And by the way, I did ask for some support from private foundations at the time, and they said, you go, girl, but we're not touching that. So
we got your back, way back.
Yeah, way back.
Well, when I use the term courage, I mean,
when you say courage, I mean, because I mean, it's not, we're not courageous. I mean,
do you have the ability and the capacity and the wherewithal to speak the truth of those you serve, our grantees,
right,
at the point of injustice, in the halls of power that you have access to? That's what I mean, right? And so, I mean, I would say, and you know, a couple of examples. One you're familiar with is gun violence.
right.
Not an area in this nation, not an area for the timid. I would say right now, where we could use some courage philanthropically as a field, as an institution, The attacks on our queer and trans brothers and sisters across the country and here. It's outrageous. It's unacceptable. And the fact that so many states are literally politically legislating against queer and trans folks is unacceptable. And we need to, whatever we're doing, we need to show up better, louder, stronger on that front. And then, as you know well, the Supreme Court's decision on Roe v. Wade and women's reproductive rights. So, right now, those that are in that battle, that's the courage.
Right.
Right?
Okay.
And we need to meet their courage.
And I'm
either
saying
with dollars, resources,
but Bob, all
voice.
I'm saying is that we have a lot less to lose. I mean, the worst thing that could happen to a private foundation happened to
That's
Cal
why
Wellness.
yeah.
We're investigated by the Attorney General.
Right. You get hate mail.
And hate mail, and
Yeah.
I mean, so the question is, because we have so little to lose, why aren't we more courageous? I mean, what is it? And all I can think of is, we want to hold on to power. Do we hold on to our jobs? I mean, I don't know why philanthropy has traditionally been, risk adverse. I mean, the community has pulled us into movement building.
Yeah, the only thing that comes to mind on this one, Dwayne, is Gandhi. Be the change you want to see. Right. I mean, we could sit here complaining about why other folks aren't more courageous, and the question is, are we being that, right?
I mean,
I will say,
what do you
Judy,
think?
but wait, one example. Did you go to the Grantmakers in Health meeting last year?
No.
Okay, it was the first Grantmakers in Health meeting
Right.
in person in a while, and it was right after. I think it was right after the Roe v. Wade call, and so, this is a room of foundation it's the foundation CEO's breakfast.
Right.
And it's like the week after the Roe v. Wade decision. And so it's not just California Philanthropy, it's health foundation leaders from all the states, right? Purple states, red states, blue states, and we're all in one room. It was the gloomiest fucking breakfast meeting I have ever been in my life. And the reason is because those foundation CEOs from the purple states and the red states, the Missouris, the Tennessees, the Floridas, all those states were freaked because, in their boardrooms, they knew that their ability and their capacity to be, to use this term, courageous in their state politically was hazardous. Hazardous for their jobs, hazardous for their boards. These boards are loaded with folks who are corporate and white and Republican.
Yeah, that gets closer to it. I mean, I think we do live in a bubble when we've gone to these meetings, and I hear about our colleagues and what they have to do in in some states. It's it gets close to being courageous. And I'm not saying that it's always fun, raising your hand or raising an issue. I write a lot about race, and the LA Times just say, we just want to tell you, when you write about race, it's going to bring out the crazies, and because of free speech, unless they use the N-word, you have to use the N-word, we'll take it down. Anything else, we will keep up. And, there's a letter that was sent to my board chair who said, could you please have her stop talking about race? It's really embarrassing the foundation.
So two things. One, As you can imagine, we could have 5 of these conversations for an hour and have 5 completely different conversations that'd be totally amazing. This is one of 5. We might have others. I want to answer your question, though, in brief. It's about the mission of philanthropy. Is it to sustain systems and treat the consequences, or is it to transform systems and move power to people? And I think if you're in that second bucket, what you look to do in the mission of your foundation and what you have to change becomes much more clear. So that's a whole conversation we can have.
Right.
But I want to fulfill a promise, which was, because you asked me to ask you about this, in the midst of this, how do you sustain in the work? You've done it for now 20 plus years. In this role alone, you've done it for 10. We've heard today people talking about how challenging it is to be on the front lines for sure, but even in the work. And so at NCG, wellness for us is a central piece of how we think of racial equity. How have you guys sustained yourselves over these long terms?
You know, it's hard to to answer that question without thinking about the last 3 years, which has been tough for any leaders, but certainly tough for me as a woman, you know, of color, leading a public health foundation. I don't think either one of us got the memo about not leading a public health foundation during a global pandemic. You know, I remember leaving the office in March of 2020 and said, I can do this for 2 weeks. It was tough. You know, I lost a family member during the early wave. My adult children were on the East Coast. You know, my husband, who was in healthcare, you know, was kind of at risk and also dealing with pressure. And I would open my email and just, you know, it's like, can you spare a dime? It's anything, help. It put me in an environment where I was uncomfortable in terms of leading, because I was leading from my backyard or in my bedroom, and I'm a person that I get a lot of support by, you know, being with people and staff and in community, and couldn't do that. And our staff members were also working really hard in community groups. And so I was off kilter and really had to pull everything I could out of the toolkit to sustain me. And just after that, another racial reckoning came. So for me, you know, folks talked earlier, writing does that. I'm a part of a writing group where people know me less about what I do on a day-to-day basis and more, you know, the pages that I bring in to my writing group every twice a month. I have always had you know, a group of primarily women who are strategically placed in different time zones around the country, so someone's always awake when I have a whack attack. These are women who assured me that I wouldn't have the only child who would go to school not potty trained. They were the ones who would give me a swift, you know, kick in behind. Yeah, you ought to apply. And they were the ones who saying, you're not going to really wear that, are you? So these are folks who, again, could care less what my title is. They just provide unconditional support. And then finally, you know, I was really fortunate. My advice to you is to find work you love and find a partner that you love more. You know, I found mine early. You know, in college, and so Raj has kind of gone through this journey with me. So that support system has been really, really important. But I would say that the support system where folks, treat me and see me as more than just a CEO, but as a person, as a mom, and all of that has been really helpful to me. And I know you lost.
Yeah, I mean, I was rushing through San Jose Airport last week, and I saw a T-shirt. A woman was wearing a T-shirt, and the back of the T-shirt. I was late for my flight. I didn't have time to ask her where she got that T-shirt. But in the back of the T-shirt, it said, "Everyone you see today is fighting a battle you know nothing about." Mm. Right? And so, yeah, I mean, I had my own moments. Dwayne, Judy's is familiar. That window between, it was like Trump got elected, and George Floyd, COVID, lost my wife, lost my mom, my daughter had mental health, like all that kind of happened within a like a 4-year kind of time frame. But yeah, and I had family and friends, and I have a pastor, and they're all just. But what inspires me is the work, right? When I lost my wife, my board said, "No, you want to take time off?" Hell no, I don't want to take time off. Because the work inspires me, right? And so, for me, back to the spiritual aspect of this, on a Saturday, I'm reading a book about John Lewis, and I'm inspired, right? On Sunday, I go to church. And on Monday, I'm visiting with a program or with a leader that's doing, incredible or extraordinary work, and maybe even signing some grants to those organizations, right? And so, what better way to be inspired in the face of Trump and Trumpism and anti-black racism and anti-Asian hate and anti-queer and trans? You gotta. It's the work and people that are doing the work who, to your point, Judy, are showing real courage, right? That's inspiring, and so for me, it's spiritually uplifting.
But I was still worried about you, Bob. I mean, I think men sometimes put on a good guise, and I think I wanted you to just be still for a while, and you wouldn't. I mean, especially after Robin, you just kept at it, and I knew.
We all grieve differently.
I know. Yeah. You're right. But I was still worried, and as you know, I did check on you.
This is. You may not realize these guys are more than peers. They're clearly friends.
I know, but I'm just saying. All I'm just saying, I'm okay, and all right, and you just kind of keep going, and I thought you were going overboard in terms of working to cover up a little bit of that pain. But like you said,
I don't want to get in the middle of this, but so I'm going to move us to this.
I think my hour with my therapist is up.
I know.
It actually is. I'm gonna move us to the speed round.
Oh, is it over?
Ordinarily,
okay.
This would be the only thing standing between us and an amazing reception that's down the hall. But I get the sense you guys wouldn't mind if I slip a couple of quick questions in to hear from them real quick.
Okay.
So the first one is, can we just acknowledge these guys for a second as pioneers and as leaders of color in major philanthropic institutions? And we see the landscape looks vastly different now than it did when you came into your roles. What's one quick piece of advice you'd have for, I don't know, a new leader of a philanthropy who's a person of color trying to help transform the system? Each of you.
Richard, wake up, man.
One piece of advice.
What would you say? Go.
Allow yourself to be spiritually grounded and centered in what we do. This is, whether you believe in God or not, this is God's work, right? And I'll hand this over to Judy. So in 3 years, July 4th, 2026, we're going to celebrate we're going to mark this nation's 250th anniversary as a nation, Declaration of Independence. And as Angela Glover Blackwell, our friend, our sister, has well put in her recent piece in SSIR, what this nation is going to be about, or needs to be about, is how do you make a multiracial democracy work? You know, after Tocqueville came to this place, 200 years ago and said, wow, this is something new, this is something different, a government for the people, by the people, run by the people, how does that work? And he observed, and what about this slavery thing you got going on here? So, for me, we are working to try and make a multiracial democracy work. We're trying to advance racial equity in a nation that was founded on rapacious racism, right? And we're trying to make capitalism work and trying to transform capitalism from its rapacious capitalism to a more inclusive capitalism. And we're investing in folks who are trying to save the planet. So, for me, I just feel so blessed to have been in this role, Dwayne and Judy, that, one piece of advice is just to cherish these roles that we have. And again, whether you believe in a God or you don't, this is this is God's work, and we're able to invest in people who are the best that this nation has to offer, and particularly at this time. And so, for me, I just feel joyful about it.
Well, first of all, I have a tremendous amount of optimism. I was mentioning this to my staff when we announced Richard's appointment, is I do have a magical power where I can really pick out talent a mile away. And so I know many of the folks in this room, and there's a lot of talent, and I believe that the field is in really good hands. I'll be honest, I have a particular passion about women and women of color in leadership. I wish that I had, raised my hand earlier or pushed earlier. So I have a real commitment in trying to make that happen. I believe that power and influence in the right hands is really important, and I'm still, even in California, I'm still in rooms where, the majority of folks sitting around the table with CEOs are men. So I'm really passionate about women putting out to the universe. I get really annoyed when search firms, and usually any major position in this field that's open, that's one of the benefits of being in these positions. We usually get a call and say, who's on the short list? And I'll say, who's on your list? And it's usually, not the names in the pipeline. There should be more, there are more. And that's a whole nother conversation. But I would say that don't be afraid in putting yourself out there as a leader. We need you. And Bob said, he was kind of a little reluctant and was kind of snatched. I kind of waited, too long before putting that out. So I would ask that you say out to the universe and put out to the universe. We need folks, many who are represented in this room, in positions of leader. And I would say not only at the CEO level, but at the board level. Bob and I would not have this position if we did not have different types of boards, and there have been in other foundations. So that's my big pitch. We need more.
Appreciate it. The final question. Which of you wants to be a senior fellow for NCG first? Oh, wait, I thought we scratched that. Never mind, forget. But you can answer that later. Tell us one thing you're looking forward to doing on the other side.
Not having to deal with HR.
Fair enough. Judy? Say no more. I got you.
You know, one of my board members, my last board meeting is in June, and a board member said, "Oh, Judy, your last board meeting is June," and I'm thinking, yes. So I more know what I don't want to do if I never have to put another board docket budget together, or you know, put on a CEO face. I'm really looking for, as we were talking about freedom, freedom to be even more present with family that have supported me. I mean, Raj says, thank goodness, you know, you're retiring. He's taken up golf, drumming, you know, cooking or whatever. So I'm looking forward to connecting kind of with him, but I'm also looking forward to kind of staying in the action, but in a different way.
Look out for the memoirs, The Board Diaries by Judy Belk, coming soon. Please join me in thanking Judy Belk, Dr. Bob Ross. And I won't attempt to summarize what's been a phenomenal day except to say, if you go back the other way, you're going to see an amazing reception. We hope you'll stay for that as well. Give yourselves a hand for the endurance to talk these deep subjects. Give the NCG team a hand for all the work they did for this. And we thank you so much for spending the day with us. We'll see you over there having some drinks.